To scale with speed, you just don't need capital. You need to get your product right. You need to get your marketing strategy right. And you need to get, most importantly, the distribution, the sales distribution. It's just happened that a lot of the companies that we funded either were like a brother and sister, husband, wife, or completely sole woman founder. We ended up almost being like about 30% of our portfolio being women founders. And we had 90 companies in the portfolio. And then we had a women LP who came on board. And she said, listen, I want to see this to be an equal opportunity. Is there a way that we can encourage more women founders to apply for your programs?
India is on the move. Now the world's fifth largest economy, set to hit $5 trillion in GDP by 2027. With over 900 million people under the age of 35, it's a powerhouse of innovation and entrepreneurship, and of course, a market that cannot be ignored. And yet, while the startup ecosystem has seen record-breaking investments, $136 billion raised in the last 5 years, there remains a glaring gap I care about. Despite outperforming on capital efficiency and returns, women-led startups still receive less than 10% of total venture capital funding. This is why my firm Beyond the Billion launched in India late last year to catalyze capital at scale for women-founded companies and shift the paradigm for the next generation of wealth creation. Which brings me to my conversation today, right in the heart of India. Few understand scaling better than my guest today. Prasad Vanga founded Anthill Ventures in 2015 with a bold vision, investing in and accelerating early-stage startups at speed. With 40-plus investments, including Trevelio, Dr. C, and Rooter, and multiple accelerator programs, Anthill is redefining growth in India's media, healthtech, and urbantech sectors. Now, as Beyond the Billion's newest consortium member, I'm excited to introduce Prasad Vanga. Prasad, the last time I saw you, we were in beautiful Sweden.
Yes.
On a boat, actually. Always in beautiful places because we're chasing the puck here in Venture. Tell me more about Anthill, your story, and why we're here in Bangalore, actually.
Firstly, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to be part of this forum. It gives me great pleasure to be one of the few men to be part of a forum like this, which is doing so much for women, especially the women founders and the women investors need this in today's times, right? Anthill was my baby, born out of pure passion for entrepreneurship. My past life was with corporates. I was with GE Capital and Genpact. We took it public in New York. We got the single ticker symbol G, and it really scaled up rapidly. It was a large startup because initially we were only servicing GE companies, and then later we would service every company in the world. With speed, over a period of 5 years, we went from 20,000 people to 75,000. We went to countries that we've never been before. We went to places like Dalian, we went to Manila, we went to Tokyo, we went to Mexico, we went to everywhere. We set up these centers. I learned a lot about culture. I learned a lot about the threads of change management that are very important for companies to understand and founders to understand. Right. So we said, okay, what can we bring to the startup ecosystem that we've learned from the large companies? And we felt it's about scalability and speed. Anthill was formed with that vision of putting these two words together, which is scale with speed. And to scale with speed, you just don't need capital. You need to get your product right. You need to get your marketing strategy right. And you need to get, most importantly, the distribution, the sales distribution. So these were things that we started offering to early stage entrepreneurs in addition to capital. And that differentiated Anthill from the remaining. But also we are an ecosystem player because we can't do this alone. We need corporates, we need the government, we need great unicorn founders that can give back to the startup world, right? And we need investors who will understand. So Anthill was born with that premises, and that's why it is called Anthill, because Anthill itself is so important for the geographical ecosystem to survive.
Absolutely. So I want to pick on a couple of threads here. One is your lens as a founder, building a significant company at that scale to then inform this journey as a venture investor. What are you taking from your time as a founder that informs what you're doing right now as an investor?
I think to be part of an executive team and to think with your feet on the ground, but at least to be adaptable all the time is a very important quality. I feel the companies that will be successful in today's market are the ones that will respond to change really fast. And that's why sometimes I see this huge difference between large corporates and startups is that the large corporates do not have the adaptability in the organization to respond with speed, and startups can change overnight. We've got so many examples in our portfolio which started as a pivot, became like the main business of the company. We have a company called Router Sports, which was basically into fan engagement on regular sports. And they said, why don't we just pivot on esports because that was not working so well? They just did that, and then it kind of streamed really well, and it became one of the largest players in India today on esports. So similarly, I think the journey of a founder and an investor, if you can combine them together, I think you can make better decisions in selecting the right founders.
Yeah.
I see a lot of corporate venture capital fail for this reason, because everything needs to be aligned to corporate objectives, right? And sometimes the decision point is not about the founder scaling up rapidly. The decision point is, can I make this in-house or can I just acquire this company? At that decision point, venture capital fails.
And it's interesting that you brought up corporate, because I was just mentioning we had Intel Capital, Nick Washburn, the senior MD there, speak about how they've built independently of the corporates, where, their very job is to take risk. It is to innovate. And that's the only way that Intel Capital, they've, invested in Red Hat, right? VMware long ago. And that's why they've succeeded and continue to succeed. So Anthill Ventures, what really excited me when you reached out, I thought was great, because your story is so unique in that you're actually early on from day one building as an ecosystem player. And in fact, you get contracted by corporates as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the structure here that you're thinking of and your vision for Anthill?
We have a simple framework: source, invest, scale, syndicate. And it harvests the same ecosystem. So what we decided is speed is there with the early stage companies. Scale is there with the large corporates. And we need to find a platform to bridge both of these together. So we started going to corporates and asking them, what are your big challenges? Right? Like Ferrero Rocher, for example, said, how do we increase our cocoa production? Or how do we find alternatives to plant-based sugar? We had other large corporates say, can we focus on food innovation? Can we focus on sustainability and climate tech? So we got closer to the corporates. That allowed the startup ecosystem to get distribution to the customers. Right. So the startups loved that, and they applied for these programs. And then we pick and choose the ones that we want to invest in. So we get to also see a lot of deal flow around. We do not have domain knowledge in any vertical. The domain knowledge comes from our partners. For example, there was this small company from Nagpur in India, and they came up with a kit that can do a swab test and find out within 5 minutes whether you have oral cancer.
Oh, wow.
And how can I evaluate that, right? Because I have a partner like HCG Hospital, which is into oncology, they did a clinical validation over a period, and it became 98% accurate. And now it's going to launch in November. We're really excited about it, because it's also going to save many lives in India, which were chewing tobacco and things like that. So this allows... It's a very interesting mix of how you leverage corporate strengths for startup scalability.
Yeah. And did you start with working with corporates first, and then the fund, of course, we have an audience, a sophisticated audience of GPs, right? As they're thinking of building their platform. We talk about platform strategy a lot. Sequoias, the Scouts, they've thought about this long ago, but you've done it in a different way. Which came first? What were your lessons learned? If a GP is listening, don't do it this way. What are your warnings here?
Because I came from an operating background, I did come from the VC world or the PE world. So I didn't have any money management capability, but I know how businesses are run and how businesses can scale. It was easier to get into this world and understand whether a startup has scalability and whether I can bring speed to it by bringing a large corporate. So what came first? First, definitely, we went to the corporates in the first 1 year and asked them their challenges. What do they want to look for? Where are they investing, right? And then we started going and sourcing the startups as well. And then we brought them at the same platform.
Right. So very much a venture builder approach. And then you had a plug-on of you needed the capital to move quickly and close on deals.
Absolutely. Whenever we created a challenge, for example, the corporate thought this was a problem, but there was a startup founder somewhere down there who would actually think that's not a problem at all. And
Interesting.
They would basically say, oh, that industry is not even going to die. And this is how we're going to change.
So the disconnect.
So the disconnect is just amazing. And corporates need to, I think, learn more and more from this ecosystem that what they think is a problem that they have to spend billions of dollars to solve is actually probably wasted money.
Is there an example? I mean, this is interesting. Like that's local to India, perhaps.
Like, for example, content in India today, like movie content,
Right.
is sold only 3 or 4 different ways. There's language rights, regional rights, and things like that. But if these rights can be sliced and diced by blockchain and can be sold and managed independently, you can actually monetize one piece of content in many different ways, which the West has actually done quite well. But Indian movie industry is one of the biggest in the world. That we're able to solve for when a founder came back and said, this is a problem, which can be viewed differently.
Yeah. And talking about sourcing, of course, what we connected on was the fact that your portfolio is very heavily represented by women.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you actually screened to create this successful.
Honestly, initially when we started, we didn't even have that filter. We said, okay, we'll listen to ideas and fund the ones that we liked. It's just happened that a lot of the companies that we funded either were like a brother and sister, husband, wife, or a women founder, completely sole women founder. So those are the early stage ones that we did. And we ended up almost being like about 30% of our portfolio being women founders. And we have 90 companies in the portfolio. Okay. And then we said, oh, wow, this is interesting. And then we had a women LP who came on board. And she said, listen, I want to see this to be an equal opportunity. Is there a way that we can encourage more women founders to apply for your programs? So we created a specific program called Athena for women founders, and a lot of companies applied for that in urban lifestyle and urban tech. And then we picked a few that we liked, and then we helped them grow. And we brought the percentage up to 45%.
Wow.
So we're 45% of our portfolio is women. Interestingly, over the last 7 years, we only lost 2% of women-led startups. So what we saw is that women not only ask the question, why, which men don't ask most of the time. We are a what and how.
Oh, interesting.
Women always ask why.
Why?
Why should I do this?
Yeah.
I mean, just rush into it, right? And this is a very interesting angle we saw. The second angle that we saw is that women stick on for much longer. When they pick up something, they think a lot about why they're picking it up. And when they do it, they want to stick on to it.
Because the why is strong.
The why is strong, right? And these two actually, I think, led more companies to stay in our portfolio. And just today, we found that one of our star women founders, Asta, who runs this company called The New Shop, which basically is like a 24/7 shop. Last week, they announced that they're acquiring all the 24/7 outlets on Board Phillips.
Wow.
And today they announced another big deal. So she is like a superstar in the portfolio. She's an inspiration to many. And many women entrepreneurs or women or housewives in different cities are actually going and franchising The New Shop.
Interesting. You saw the opportunity of investing in women. And of course, it was driven by your LP, right? Which is why at Beyond the Billion, you were at the round table on family offices. We actually connected because of the Family Office Alliance, because we know when the LP says diversity should be a condition of my capital, things change. Are you seeing this wave in India with women stepping up, or is there not enough as LPs? Tell us a little bit about the landscape you're seeing.
I think one of the important things is whenever we bring on board a strong woman founder or a strong women investor, they're always out there to support other women. But there, it should involve men who are supportive, who can take that decision point saying that, listen, I'm going to back women founders and give them the ecosystem for them to survive. I think financial independence in this country is for women is the single most compelling thing that I can provide. I always want every woman to be financially independent so she can make her own decisions.
Right.
And venture is a great way to do that.
As we were looking at the family offices, I believe it is last year, based on the Forbes richest list, that the richest has surpassed $1 trillion. We have more billionaires than ever before here. And a lot of the wealth, especially in Bangalore, this is tech town, right? The Silicon Valley of India is built on entrepreneurship and innovation. So are we seeing, I mean, when you think about even your cap table for Anthill as a fund, is this predominantly corporate money, family office money? What's the landscape for India?
Yeah. 80% of our capital is family offices. 20% is corporate.
Is this reflective, you think, across with your colleagues?
Depending. But as you say, as India is new to the family office concept, there is a lot of opportunity. So folks who've been traditionally doing businesses never thought about even thinking about a family deed, right? They're now saying, oh shit, after I'm gone, how are my kids going to manage my wealth, right? Or how is wealth being distributed? So now families are really waking up to the thought. They're learning from European family offices, American family offices, even Asian family offices, which have been like, for example, Hong Kong and some of these have been family offices for a long time, right? Indian families are controlling everything with like one person on the top. But now it's going in, and then they're also allocating capital to private wealth.
Some people say that the funding winter may be coming to an end, and we're looking forward with excitement. But of course, after a lot of mishaps, right? There were fraud issues, there were real crazy valuations for nothing, growth at all costs.
Yeah.
What do we need to know if we're looking to invest in India?
Sure. See, firstly, Indian venture is just the last 15 years, right? I feel from a very immature venture ecosystem, we become mature. We understand and pick the deals and the entrepreneurs that can scale quickly. Obviously, it's a land of more than $1 billion. You will find frauds here and there. As a percentage, if I look at the amount of fraud that is done, then you can actually compare it to the world and then say, no, based on the population, this is quite less, right? But at the same time, the capital is coming into a lot of funds. Today, you've seen a lot of funds say, oh, we're bringing in $1 billion and things like that.
Yeah.
India has the largest young population in the world. We are getting close to almost between 700 to 900 million youngsters who are spending a lot of time on the internet, who are buying, who want experiences, who are more conscious of the planet, right? So there's opportunity is immense from a consumption standpoint, domestic consumption standpoint. So venture, for that matter, is going to just grow. Definitely, there was this funding winter because of many reasons. One is that people said, oh my God, like I'm invested so many startups, I'm not getting an exit out. They didn't understand the ecosystem. They also need to understand that in venture, you have to stay longer. They can't get over this, that the funds are 7 years to 10 years long, whereas public markets are performing super well, right? So obviously, the financial decision for money is going to go where can I make more money from it, if it's a financial investor. But if it's a strategic investor who wants to also rethink about the strategy of the company and the impact that it is giving, then venture is a great way to do that.
And of course, you talk about the 7 years being too short, but in 7 years of you building, you've returned, what was it, more than 10x?
10.8.
10.8. So this is multiples DPI?
Yeah, this is just a multiple.
Multiple.
We've exited out of 9 companies, and there the exit values are about 2.54x.
Wow.
Yeah, but overall portfolio is up by 10.8.
That's amazing. So tell us about what you're seeing here. I mean, of course, you know, in a venture portfolio, you've got your winners, you've got your losers, but what is the exit landscape as we're thinking about liquidity, right? I mean, the crunch for fundraising is also because, as you said, LPs put in the first round, maybe this is their first time And they're like, well, I haven't got my money back. Why should I invest in more funds?
I think the strategy now is to understand where the exits are coming from, right? If you're an early stage investor like us, then your exits are usually Series C and Series D. If you're a late stage investor, your exits are probably IPO or PE or M&A, right? Yeah. Indian M&A has not gone to that level like the US. People don't pay a high value. They try and see if they can do it in-house. Okay, that's why the M&A landscape is still highly dependent on global companies coming and acquiring Indian companies. You've not seen many Indian companies acquiring or paying a huge price for another Indian company.
Yeah.
So that is the gap that we have from M&A standpoint. But SME market and the IPO market is becoming very, very strong. There is a hope on the IPO market. People are investing a lot. So that's slowly becoming interesting as well. So exits are just two kinds now, in my view, is secondary exits for early stage investors and IPO for the bigger funds at this point.
So what's your AUM right now? Remind me with Anthill?
120 million.
120 million. Looking ahead as we wrap up here, 5 years later, we're having the same conversation in beautiful Sheraton in Bangalore. Where do you see Anthill going?
Wow. So we're headquartered in Singapore. We work with the Singapore government very closely. For the last 7 years, we've been bringing Singapore tech into Indian markets. Now, Singapore wants us to also look at consumer. So consumer lifestyle brands that have grown in Singapore, we want to bring them into Indian markets as well. And also Indian IP companies that have better protection to Singapore to scale in the Southeast of Asia.
Right.
So definitely Singapore will strengthen for the Southeastern Asian markets. In the Nordics, we have a lot of interest because the Nordics have some amazing technologies on climate tech.
Deep tech.
Or deep tech, which have a huge potential in Indian operations, Indian market, right? So we've been trying to bridge that gap, and that's why you've seen me traveling quite a bit to Finland, Sweden, is because we're trying to find the right fit of family offices at both sides to interact with each other and bring some of those over here.
That's excellent. We've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. Well, I won't let you go yet. Are you ready for $1 billion questions, Prasad? All right. Biggest career mistake.
Oh, wow. This is difficult. Switching from technology to go back to my family business. I love the whole Alcobev business, but I love technology much more. So I tried to do that with my dad for a while and then decided, no, I'd rather be an investor in Alcobev versus actually operating it. And now we've invested in 4 Alcobev companies.
Was Dad happy with this decision?
Yeah, that definitely. Because he wanted
Get him out. All right, fill in the blank. Successes.
To me, is satisfaction for my soul.
Satisfaction for my soul. I love that. All right. Failure is?
Failure is not being able to get what you're manifesting and digressing into other paths.
And to bring us home here, I want my legacy to be?
To have purpose.
To have purpose.
Yeah. Until or anything that I leave behind should have a purpose and intent to impact people's lives in a better way.
Well, Prasad, for being a purposeful investor, which is our theme of the work that we do, and my purpose to encourage more purposeful investing, thank you so much for your time, for joining me in Bangalore.
Thank you.
Keep making $1 billion moves, my friend. And thanks so much for tuning in this week. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and follow our socials on Sarah Chen Global to get the latest on the show. It would really help me out too if you enjoyed this to rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts and share your favorite episodes with a friend. I'm Sarah Chen-Spellings and you've been listening to $1 Billion Moves.